Welcome, everyone. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Rochester. Welcome on this wonderful Sunday morning. This is a church of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom and spiritual paths. Your faith, doubts, identities are all welcome here. Welcome to visitors and newcomers, and those of you who are joining us online. Will everybody just turn around and wave? We're so glad you're here. So there is a preschool playroom open for young ones and groups for kids following the time for all ages. After the service, join us down in the Commons for refreshments and fellowship, where you can find ways to get connected to the church and this community. On Wednesdays, we have our Tupper Suppers and programs, and this Wednesday's forum is titled Mapping Prejudice. And join Phil Wheeler, Derek Robertson, Amy Nelson, and the youth in this intergenerational forum to transcribe the racial covenants from historical property records in Olmsted County. This should be an incredibly powerful gathering, so please come and bring your laptop computer, if possible, because we're going to share and do some things with those. Supper is at 5:30, and the forum is at 6:15 with childcare, and all are welcome. Our pledge drive for this year is coming to a close, and first off, we thank everyone who has made a pledge this spring to our annual budget. Your generosity and your support have been amazing, and still there's a number of you who have yet to turn in your pledge cards, and so we ask you to do so online or in person. And now I would like to invite our board member, Paul, to the chancel to make an announcement on behalf of our church board. Thank you, Paul.
Good morning, everyone. So those of you who were here last week heard me make this announcement. The board felt it was important enough that we probably need to make it twice, and so that's why I'm up here again. And before I begin also, I want to thank you, those of you who have already donated, for your generosity. We raised $5,000 to $6,000 in individual donations so far, and we haven't checked the pledges yet, but we're expecting those to increase as well. So we want to thank you in advance for that. So the board feels deeply grateful to our exceptional staff and the amazing programming that they have cultivated and continue to cultivate within our church community. Unfortunately, we have to share an unexpected insurance cost that is negatively impacting our budget, and unless additional funds are raised, it will impact our ability to provide cost of living increases to staff and maintain programming excellence that we all expect. As you may or may not have heard, our property insurance bill increased 880% over the last year, from $5,800 to nearly $50,000. This increase is a result of the costs of insurance companies are experiencing as a result of global warming and climate change, and it is happening all over the country. The surprise insurance bill has greatly impacted our budget, but we are committed to supporting our staff and maintaining excellent programming. A number of pledges are still outstanding, but even with those pledges, we expect that the pledge income will remain about the same as last year. We are working hard to avoid making any cuts, but we need your help. We want to ask you once again to consider a one-time gift or increasing your pledge to help us address the unanticipated deficit. Gail Bishop will be downstairs at the table, at the pledge table immediately after services. I'll be down that neck of the woods as well, so we can answer any questions you may have. And please consider giving a donation. You can increase your pledge by going online, filling out one of the purple pledge forms that are down, pink pledge forms or fuchsia pledge forms that are downstairs, and you can fill out one of those and to increase your pledge if you so wish, or if you haven't pledged yet, this would be a good opportunity for you to do so. You can also go online and pledge that way, and there's a QR code in today's bulletin that you can use to make that payment. And once again, I want to thank you all for your support. We knew, the board was pretty confident that when we made this announcement that you guys would respond like you always do, and so far you have, and we want to thank you for that. So.
Our justice partner this month is the Village Agricultural Cooperative, and we are excited for their work and to lend our support. And next month's justice partner is Med City Refuge, and we have one of their members here to tell us about this organization. So, Liv, will you please come up and join us on the chancel?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for thank you. Thank you so much for welcoming us into your place of worship this morning. We really, really appreciate it. My name is Liv. I am a board member with Med City Refuge, and I'm just here to tell you a little bit about what we do. So Med City Refuge is a nonprofit organization that provides affordable lodging for people accessing gender-affirming care in Rochester. Refuge is an acronym that guides our mission, and it stands for Receiving Everyone Fully, Unapologetically, with Grace and Extravagance.
Nice.
MCR aims to reduce the financial burden of travel and lodging for people who cannot access this life-saving health care near their homes due to prohibitive legislation. In addition to affordable lodging, we seek to fulfill basic needs and provide resources while creating a joyful and empowering environment to support folks during their gender-affirming journey. The ultimate dream is a building with room for guests, a communal kitchen, and spaces for gathering. To begin helping people traveling to Rochester for gender-affirming care as soon as possible, our first goal is to provide hotel vouchers. Next, we hope to establish a network of local volunteers who can provide a spare bedroom to patients during their stay. We are in the process of building a network of volunteers who are passionate about reducing barriers to accessing gender-affirming care. Currently, Med City Refuge is in need of your support to make this life-saving dream possible. Initially, donations will go towards hotel vouchers as well as legal guidance, establishing a background check program, and administrative needs. Though MCR is working to secure grants, most grants require 2 to 3 years of proven programming. However, studies show that nonprofits receive 64% of their funding from individuals like you. 64%. Every donation, no matter the size, will be vital in creating a safe space for those who desperately need it. Med City Refuge is honored to have your support in whatever form it takes. This is a way that we as a local Rochester community can provide material support for people who cannot access what they need in their own communities. As we share this program with others, we hear over and over again how needed it is and hear personal stories of how life-saving it will be for folks. Today, we humbly ask you to donate to Med City Refuge to make this dream a reality. If you want to volunteer with Med City Refuge, please talk to us after the worship. We'll be here for coffee hour. Thank you for giving us this time and considering the ways in which you can contribute to this much-needed, life-saving endeavor. Your time, talents, and donations are greatly appreciated. Help Med City Refuge ensure that Rochester is a place for everyone seeking gender-affirming care, where they can access regardless of financial or geographic barriers. Thank you very much.
Just a couple more announcements. Next Sunday is our coming of age service, and we hope that you will all come and support our youth in this very important marker in their religious lives. And it's Maypole Sunday, and a big bagpipe extravaganza, and it's happening between the services, so you better show up. That's all I have to say. So friends, I invite you now to take a deep breath as we enter this sacred time. Today, our service is going to be led by your fellow members in an exploration of their lived experience growing up in our Unitarian Universalist faith and where and how it is calling us today. We're going to sing songs from their experience and stories that are connected to their history. And in this spirit, we open with these words from our minister in the 1870s, the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes. May our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It is good to be together. In a moment, our opening hymn will call us back. You can find the lyrics on the screen or in your hymnal. And before we sing, I invite you to rise in body or spirit and greet those around you.
Now for the chalice lighting, I'd like to share some words that we used to light the chalice when I was a youth, before we started doing this is the UU church with the hand signs and stuff. So we light this chalice, a fragment of stars and sun, to light our hopes and dreams and to make a way for peace and love. Now we will receive the offering gratefully. Thank you.
I'd like to invite the children forward, or if anybody else would like to come forward. We're going to have the pictures will be up on the screen today. But I have a question for you. So a few weeks ago, we talked about Jesus. Does anybody remember when we talked about Jesus and said that Jesus was like a potato? Right? Because Jesus, out of one person, can spread love and spread potatoes to lots of different people. Well, today we're going to talk about somebody that we don't often talk about in this way, but some people think he's Jesus's father. Some people think that he was just someone Jesus followed. Does anybody know who I'm talking about? Who? God. Yep. And so if Jesus was a potato, what do you think God was? Should we find out a little bit? Do you think that there's one answer? What? You're okay? Okay. So today's story is Old Turtle. I think some of you might have seen this around. And the text is altered slightly, as we do sometimes. But it's based on the original text of Douglas Wood, and the watercolors are by Chegki Chi. Ready to find out a little bit about God? Or so we think. Once long, long ago, yet somehow not very long, when all the animals and rocks and winds and waters and trees and birds and fish and all the other beings of the world could speak and understand one another, there began an argument. It began softly at first. He is a wind who is never still. She is a great rock that never moves. They are snowy peaks high above the clouds. But God is a swimmer in the dark blue sea. No, no, no. They are twinkling and shining far away. No, no, no. God is a sound and a scent and a feeling inside you. No, he is a runner, swift and free. She is always growing and part of the world. No, 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 God is not part of this world. He is far above all of us. Now this argument grew louder and louder until a new voice spoke. And this was a voice that rarely ever spoke. It was Old Turtle. And she spoke to those who argued. God is indeed deep in the ocean and high in the mountains. He is swift and free, but solid as a rock. She is the life of the world, but grows beyond the most distant of light. Gentle and powerful, above and within, all that we came from and all we can find and all we don't know. God is. All of the other animals and rocks and trees looked. Old Turtle had never said so much at one time before. All of the beings were surprised into silence, but Old Turtle had one more thing to say. There is a new being coming to the world, and they will come in many colors and shapes with different faces and different ways of speaking, and they will possess many powers, and they will share a message of love. And so the people came. But how quickly they forgot. They forgot their power and they forgot their message of love that they were supposed to be spreading. And you know what happened? They began to argue. Not only about God, but about power and science and life. and everything they came for was forgotten. Because the people could not remember who they were until a voice came, a voice that rarely ever spoke. They came to remind them, "You are here with power and love. Now look around you. Look around you. There he is in the dark blue sea, and watch her reflect the sun. We feel her breath as she blows by. And remember, no matter how far away, God is very close, and their love touches everything." The people were stunned to silence. This voice was scary but comforting, powerful yet gentle. And the people listened and began to hear and to see God in one another. And they saw God in one another all around them, for God is not a thing or a person, but God exists in the love of the people and the beauty of the earth. And Old Turtle knew if people could stop arguing long enough to look around, they would find a piece of God and themselves in others. And Old Turtle, well, she just smiled. So we're going to go down and talk a little bit more about all of this. We'll sing the children out. You can find the children's benediction in the inside cover, back cover of your hymnal.
The first reading is a quote by Victoria Stafford. Douglas Steer, a Quaker teacher, says that the ancient question, "Who am I?" inevitably leads to a deeper one. Whose am I? Because there is no identity outside of relationship. You cannot be a person by yourself. To ask, "Whose am I?" is to extend the question far beyond the little self-absorbed self and wonder. Who needs you? Who loves you? To whom are you accountable? To whom do you answer? Whose life is altered by your choices? With whose life, whose lives is your own all bound up inextricably in obvious or invisible ways?
Growing up, I was a voracious reader, so I often received books as presents. One of my grandmothers gave me children's stories of the Bible. Another grandmother gave me Tales of Maui, and an aunt gave me household stories by the Brothers Grimm. Now, these, along with tales of Baba Yaga, Aesop's Fables, The Lion and the Witch in the Wardrobe, and Wrinkle in Time, had stories of conflict, adventure, mythology, and magic. And for me, they all kind of had equal footing as ways to explore other worlds and cultures. Learning and questioning was a value I absorbed while attending Unitarian Universalist Society of Iowa City in the 70s and 80s as a child. This was an era when humanism dominated a lot of our congregations. Humanism emphasizes the importance of reason, science, and critical thinking, and encourages individuals to take responsibility for their own ethical and spiritual development, rejecting supernaturalism and stressing an individual's dignity and worth and capacity for self-realization through reason. So, what were Sunday services like? We sat in pews. There's a church up there. We collected offerings, sang hymns, and listened to sermons. But I don't remember lighting a chalice. And the purposes and principles weren't created until I was in college. Our gray hymnal that we just sang from was published when I moved to Rochester. There weren't summer services, as was true for many UU congregations back then. And even though I went to church regularly, I honestly don't remember learning much about belief or what it meant to be a Unitarian Universalist. And being both a Unitarian and a Universalist was still a fairly new concept. And, certainly I struggled to recognize biblical references in high school English classes, and it's taken me a while to have some framework of understanding Christianity other than what I learned watching TV shows like Little House on the Prairie. I did take the About Your Sexuality class in 8th grade, which was a precursor to our Whole Lives program. But I wasn't involved with the youth group, and we didn't have a coming-of-age program. I'm sure I was influenced by Tom Michelson, my childhood minister, who was heavily involved with community outreach in Iowa City. In reading his obituary, I learned that he served on boards of United Action for Youth, the Civil Liberties Union, Crisis Center, and the Housing Commission. He helped found the Iowa City branch of the NAACP and was a featured guest on several Iowa TV shows and at the university. But it also mentioned that he was a Reiki master, knew 8 languages, loved to sing, and was a serious photographer. He wrote the hymn, "Wake Now My Senses," that we sang earlier, in honor of the installation of Charity Rowley as Minister of Religious Education in Arlington, Massachusetts. And I remember Charity from her time spent in Iowa City. When I was looking for my first job after graduate school, one of my requirements was that there was a UU church nearby. Why? I think my strongest memories of growing up UU was the feeling of connection. I felt valued and encouraged by other adults who were not my parents. Even as a shy youngster who helped wash dishes during Worthley Club dinners and took care of the preschoolers on Sundays, I felt a sense of belonging. More than religion, I remember potlucks, church picnics, Christmas caroling, and dancing to fiddle music. Moving to Rochester, there were similarities and differences. For instance, the Iowa City congregation was historically Unitarian, and it's in a university town, so there was a focus on critical analysis and academics. This congregation was historically Universalist, and I think was influenced by Mayo Clinic and the whole idea of caring for others, maybe more heart. A similarity was the feeling of connection. The maypole, camping at Whitewater, and potlucks helped me feel welcome and part of this beloved community. Looking back, even though the words and rituals have changed over time, concepts such as celebrating worth and dignity of each person, caring for the larger community, and being curious, these have been common threads. As I've grown as a Unitarian Universalist, I think I've become less concerned with the labels and more focused on just being and doing.
invite you to find yourself in this here and now. Breathe deep this breath of life. Feel below you the earth and its ancient turning. Above you the sky and beyond you the stars, holding you in their venerable light, holding you in this moment, this breath. You yourself are made of earth and stars, and in this house you are named and known as beloved, as sacred. Let us enter a time of silence together, allowing our hearts to open, our minds to find some ease, and our bodies to rest in breath. Spirit of life and love, God and Gaia of many names and beyond all naming, the rain has felt good. All around the lime green of leaves appearing on bare branches lifts our spirits. The soil beckons and the sky is filled with bird song and their unabashed calls for hope. Still in all this beauty, this time of promise, we are weighed down and disheartened by the conscious and unconscious brutalities of this world, the unraveling of our natural ecologies, our propensity to only entertain the storyline that suits us, and to carry on with business as usual. We cry for the loneliness that pervades our modern lives, this deep sense of disconnection and disenfranchisement, especially for our young folk and for our elders. Wars rage in our hearts and across the globe. We ache for the Gazan people, the devastations, the crying children, and tens of thousands of lives lost. Our hearts break for the communities in Israel who wonder if they will ever see their loved ones again, or who mourn the death of their friends. In the midst of this man-made hell, we offer our prayers to all those working to mitigate harm and stop the atrocities, from journalists and doctors and humanitarian workers on the ground to global multi-faith and secular movements advocating for a ceasefire, as do we. Today we pray for some kind of balance in our hearts, some skillful tethering of our spirits. Help us not to back away in disgust or overwhelm, but engage with the world and its sorrows. And at the same time, let us practice mercy and care for ourselves and others as we create capacity in our lives to fill up and go out once again. Like the tender shoots of green buried under layers of leaves and winter's debris, may we find the narrow openings, the glimmers of light along the edges of the past, and the promises of a warming sun, of connections that sustain. With strength far beyond our size, may we push out and into the creativity and promise of now. And as the poet writes, toward the dearest freshness of deep down things. There are so many places, so many people we carry in our hearts today, and so we take this time to speak their names aloud. May the weight of oppression be lessened. May the grip of addiction loosen. May truth be told. May hearts be strengthened and burdens lightened. May it be so. Amen.
The second reading is Ubuntu by Bishop Desmond Tutu. One of the sayings in our country is Ubuntu, the essence of being human. Ubuntu speaks particularly about the fact that you can't exist as a human being in isolation. It speaks about our interconnectedness. You can't be human all by yourself, and when you have this quality, Ubuntu, you are known for your generosity. We think of ourselves far too frequently as just individuals, separated from one another. Whereas you are connected and what you do affects the whole world. When you do it well, it spreads out. It is for the whole of humanity.
Tucked up on a hill, guarded by a stone retaining wall with small trees growing along the top, an opening, barely wide enough to fit a car, leads you up a winding path to the simple front door of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship where I grew up. And unlike the other churches in historic downtown Burlington, Iowa, with stone steeples and stained glass windows, my fellowship resided in a small house-looking building with bright orange-red siding, which matches the siding of the apartment complex it shares a block with. The apartment complex used to be a single-family mansion for some bigwig in Burlington's past, and my UU, in its past life, was the carriage house, or in other words, the horse barn. I can picture it so clearly in my mind, walking up the winding path between trees, my hand gliding along a black metal railing. I keep transporting back to that specific location and sensation the most. Not inside the building with its one-room meeting hall and a tiny kitchen off to the side where my mom helped serve coffee. And not upstairs, where I spent time learning about world religions with my sisters, playing and exploring. No, the memory that keeps presenting itself is something that I experienced countless times. It is of walking the path, of movement and searching, and the exhale of arriving. That means something, doesn't it? Because for me, being UU means being dynamic, as an individual and in fellowship. It is how I travel past, throughout, and about this life with action that reflects my spirit. How I serve, how I listen, how I rest and reflect and think. How I do my very best not to take things that feel uncomfortable personally, or as a sign that I am not worthy, or worse, that I am more worthy than somebody else. And somehow, without memorization, without someone telling me directly from a pulpit or in Sunday school, and perhaps most notably, as I have listened to some of your stories, without guilt that I am letting down a God with conditional love, or pain in being told that I am born incorrectly and I will go to hell if I don't correct myself. Somehow without this, my practice is to add love to this world and to clear the way so justice may roll down like waters just feels naturally necessary. And that means something, doesn't it? Because it is not easy to live in this world this way. And even with this naturally necessary drive and trust in my heart, I often make mistakes or feel exhausted. Logically, in times like these, I turn to my neighbor, both nature and human. I remind myself I am not alone in this web of existence. And perhaps that instinct is the humanist side of me, as my congregation absolutely leaned on those teachings and Unitarian reason. We were, after all, not a church, but a fellowship, who congregated together not in a sanctuary, but in a meeting hall. Yet, there was an air of ritual that held us together. Lighting the chalice, shared moments of silence and meditation, candlelit Christmas Eve services, and holding space for our joys and sorrows. I remember the annual water and flower communions, dancing around a maypole, though not every May. I remember my dad leading youth group, countless potlucks, a Passover Seder or two, and of course, singing and reading from our gray hymnals in unison. In fact, soon, we will sing a short refrain that I remember singing every Sunday. I'm told it's a doxology, whatever that means, because it was only way later in life that I discovered most of our hymns have borrowed music and rewritten lyrics. When Eric Cherry, the minister I remember most growing up, left our congregation, I was 14. And after that, my family's attendance slowed and then stopped altogether. But something had already taken roots, and throughout my early 20s, I found myself searching again for a like-minded community where I could be and breathe in peace. Gratefully, I wound up here. And oddly enough, I have traveled a similar path that was partially paved by someone in our collective history. Eliza Tupper Wilkes, minister of this church in the 1870s, first started preaching at a Universalist pulpit in a small town in Iowa called Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant happens to be the midpoint between Burlington, my home congregation, and Iowa City, Beth's hometown congregation, if you are traveling north, which we know that Eliza did. And after she spent some time in Wisconsin, she came to Rochester and was ordained by this congregation's, by Rose's ancestors, on May 2nd, 1871, almost 153 years ago to this very morning. And May 2nd also happens to be my birthday. Does that mean something? I don't know. But at the end of the day, as the winding path of transforming change stretches on, I trust you, beloved community. It is natural for my heart to embrace the dynamics of fortunate feeling, I am well aware. But I also find it logically necessary. After all, I am responsible for my sense of peace and meaning. Perhaps Old Turtle sums it up best. God is, and so am I. And you are too. So, please join me in singing a short refrain or a doxology if you prefer. The lyrics will be posted on the screen, and you may remain seated.
Second Music by Anne Lightheart. Now I understand that there are two melodies playing, one below the other, one easier to hear the other lower, steady, perhaps more faithful for being less heard, yet always present. When all other things seem lively and real, this one fades, yet the notes of it touch as gently as fingertips, as the sound of the names laid over each child at birth. I want to stay in that music without striving or cover. If the truth of our lives is what it is playing, the telling is so soft that this mortal time, this irrevocable change becomes beautiful. I stop and stop again to hear the second music. I hear the children in the yard, a train, then birds. All this is in it and will be gone. I set my ear to it as I would to a heart.
As the spam emails I receive on my staff email are constantly reminding me, churches across the country are reporting declining membership, especially among young adults. Some blame the decline of marriage and family values, others blame economic demands or political polarization. Whatever the reason, I find it ironic that here I stand, somewhat at odds with the trend, a 31-year-old who just rejoined my congregation with my significant other who I first met as a youth in this congregation. And astonishingly, membership here is still increasing year to year. And we're going to build a new church. I mean, it's crazy. It makes you wonder what we're doing right. So here are 4 things that I think we're doing right, and these are why I keep coming back. So number 1, we're giving members space to explore faith and learn without judgment. I fondly remember attending church as a kid. When I was in elementary school, I mostly looked forward to interacting with the other kids here in a more relaxed and generally unsupervised atmosphere than there ever was at school. Between services, we'd often play outside, building forts with downed limbs and taking turns climbing the big, sticky spruce tree on the top of the limestone hill that way. We liked to see who could get as highest without chickening out. And in autumn, we each took red sumac leaves from the trees at the bottom of the hill and taped them to the back of our name tags as a symbol of our membership in what we called the Red Leaf Club. Back then, church to me was about making new friends and just breaking up the routine of daily life. In junior high, the major highlight was the Our Whole Lives Human Sexuality class. It was overwhelmingly informative, and more than any sex ed class me or my peers had taken at school, and that fact alone made us knew it was very important. Any teen awkwardness or apprehension we felt in attending the class was supplanted by this sense of, we're in this together. And the following year, we embarked on the coming of age curriculum, which challenged us to write a statement of our own faith and beliefs and organize the service as a group, kind of giving us a taste of what it was like to participate in worship as an adult member. So, space to learn. Number 2, we're attempting to build intergenerational relationships within our church. I think here we all take collective responsibility for the safety and joy of our children. One year when I was still quite young, there was a lovely program that somebody organized where the kids were matched with adults in the congregation as sort of pen pals. Kind of reminded me of like Secret Santa, except it wasn't at Christmas. They set up little mailboxes for us in the commons where we could leave notes and gifts for one another. And after a few months of exchanging this, there was an event where we met our adult mentors, and in person, we were able to thank them personally for their gifts and care. It only ever happened once that I remember, and I personally think we should do this like every year. I also, from a music standpoint, I want to continue to expand more opportunities for intergenerational music making, such as bringing the Chalice Choir and the Walden Hill Vocal Ensemble together so that you can sing together. I remember doing that a few times as a kid, but there's always room for more. So, number 3, we're pushing each other out of our comfort zone, and we're doing it together. We show up en masse to social justice events like peace marches, MLK rallies, and pride events. We also connect in small groups like chalice circles, worship community, and youth group. And I always looked forward to attending youth group events, lock-ins, and cons. Fun fact, I actually helped organize the first con that I know of in this church called Pirate Con when I was a youth, and I also claim full credit for coining the term Y for Walden Hill Youth, inspired by the Walden Hill Vocal Ensemble terminology. But I thought Y was a very fitting acronym that encompassed the questioning attitude cultivated by our religious education program. And one particular Wednesday night youth group, we were given a sack of potatoes, told to write positive messages on them, and then we all squished into our mentor's car and drove around downtown Rochester handing them out to strangers. It was weird, but it was also really fun, and it definitely took me out of my introverted comfort zone. But it was fascinating to observe the variety of reactions we got from folks, ranging from humor to confusion. And imagine if we could provide more just out there, out of the box, radical opportunities for our members to go and practice mutual aid with our unhoused neighbors, or reaching out to other people in the community in these weird ways that create space to connect with people that you wouldn't expect. When you don't have that expectation of things going a certain way, like anything can happen. Number 4, we're not afraid to talk about problems and discuss solutions. We embrace change and we shape it. In RE, I remember we learned about that pagan practices were appropriated into Catholicism to make religious conversion easier. And in learning this, some of the youth argued that organized religion as a whole was bad because it functioned as a means to control the lower class and dictate cultural norms. But our UU principles and values were written with the intent of shedding some of that baggage, hierarchy, dogma, and superstition found in other religions. So then what is the point of a UU church where seemingly anything goes? Or perhaps that is the point. When religions dictate the proper way to act or what to believe to its members, they fail to connect with their personal experiences. That's when people stop finding value in church. If we're going to escape a hierarchical, patriarchal, dominating, colonizing power dynamic, we need to learn how to be in power with one another and not in power over one another. And that's what we do in UU churches. We need that now more than ever to practice solidarity and mutuality. So we spend so much of our lives striving to meet others' expectations at work or school, trying to fit into culture to survive, or just hustling to support ourselves and our families, or distracting ourselves from the pain or boredom of repressing our own humanity in order to cope and survive in this late-stage capitalist society. We can easily end up disconnected from hearing the second music, as Annie Lightheart describes it. Where then can we be truly free to have space and time to reflect on our lives, reconnect with ourselves and others, and build loving community? I believe the UU Church and churches, communities can function as a haven for individuals seeking to make deeper emotional and spiritual connections with each other. And as music director here, I feel empowered when I am invited to share music that moves me, and affirmed when somebody lets me know that the music moved them also. When a church serves its purpose, people will choose to return, not out of fear, shame, or coercion, but because the community is meeting the needs of the members. So, I'd like to leave you with this image before we sing the last hymn. This print was gifted to me in high school by Brent Breitenbach, who is a fellow Walden Hill Youth peer of mine. It reads, if you can't see it, "There came a moment in the middle of the song when she suddenly felt every heartbeat in the room, and after that she never forgot she was part of something much bigger." So, Would you please rise in body or spirit and sing with me one of my favorite hymns, number 347.
My friends, go out into the world knowing that you are deeply connected to one another and to this beautiful, beautiful world. May it be so, and amen.
Thank you.